Playoff strategies, top waiver wire pitchers for this weekend, and two-star pitchers, all coming up on Real Talk Fantasy Baseball. All right. Welcome to Real Talk Fantasy Baseball. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button to our channel. We would very much appreciate that. Kevmo, you haven't been on the show for a little while. How you been, man?
Good, man. I've been good. It's been a little too long. I love being on this thing.
Yeah, dude. It's always a great time when you're on here, man. It's fun to talk to people that really know baseball, and I feel like
Absolutely.
anyone in our keeper league is a good option to have on the show. But I asked you before if you wanted to be part of the show, and I know you got a little baby at home now, so it's hard for you, the timing and everything. But
right.
I love when you come on the show, whether it's just as a guest or whatever, man. So I appreciate you coming on and covering for John while he's on vacation right now.
Absolutely. I love being on, and you understand, so I appreciate it. But maybe one day.
Yeah, man. Yeah, you got a couple little Rugrats hanging around right now. So maybe in the future, when they're a little bit older and they're in school full time, it'll be a little easier for you.
Yeah.
All right, man. So on today's show, we have fantasy baseball playoff strategies. So starting with my boy Kevmo. Now, Kevmo, you play in multiple fantasy leagues each season. Why don't you go ahead and tell us the leagues that you're in this year, the format, maybe a quick rundown of the settings of the leagues you're in.
Okay, so I was in 3 leagues, but my dad started. He wanted to be in one too, so I kind of was like co-managing with him. So the 3 leagues that I was in charge of are all points leagues. So the Real Talk Baseball one is the one. I feel like it's slightly different than some of the ones that we have. We have 2 utility spots, but points league. The other one was Javi's, also points league, and then I have the old man league. I've told Will about it. It's not even worth really going into because it's just like. It's super weird. You have to have like specific roster rules, so it's kind of hard to talk strategy about that one because I literally don't think there's any other league that is like that. It's pretty dumb. I'm not gonna lie. This is my last time being in that league this year, which is kind of a blessing to be honest. But the one that my dad is in that I'm kind of co-managing, he's doing it. He's just kind of like checking in with me because he's an old man, so he needs help with like the technology parts. That one's a category league, so it's still head to head, but it's categories. So strategy wise, going into the playoffs, honestly, a lot of it for all leagues, kind of the legwork is done, I believe, kind of beforehand. You kind of go into the playoffs with like the bones of your team really. For points, I feel like the biggest difference, or not necessarily difference, but the biggest thing that you're going to be doing is streaming pitchers. And then, every time I'm on the pod, I always say this. I'm sure, everyone, remembers me saying it, is you got to know your league. So in the Real Talk League, we got 7 moves. So that kind of is a big part of it. In the ESPN one with Javi, it's only 4 moves per week. And I think the big thing with that, if you're streaming pitchers, is the more moves you have, obviously you can kind of be a little bit more fluid with how many, like who you're picking up. And that can be kind of an issue. It was an issue for me. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how, like, what I did, but it's also not necessarily like I'm here to help you guys win your guys' league. So basically do as I say, not as I do. So what I did was I was just like, we got 7 moves. I'm going to stream. I'm going to go for a lot more quality or quantity rather than quality to see if I can get those points. It kind of backfired a little bit. I streamed to the wrong guys, got some negative points, and so now I'm in a little bit of a hole. So probably would have been in a hole regardless, just based off of who's been playing, but it's a little bit deeper. If it's in the ESPN league where there's only 4 moves, then you kind of have to be a little bit more like stringent about who you're streaming. and I feel like that's kind of a big part of it as well. Although I will say this, with categories and with points, you can look ahead. And looking ahead, you can stream hitters as well, especially in categories. I feel like this matters a little bit more, but in points it can happen too. Um, if games in Colorado, you might want to look at some of those matchups. First person that comes to mind is like someone like Jock Peterson. If he's playing, the Diamondbacks are playing against a lot of righties, maybe you stream him for a little bit because he's good. So really, I would just say the main thing with strategy is kind of planning a little bit ahead than just the day by day, just to kind of set yourself up a little bit like that. That's the main thing that I like to do. Believe me, I'm a nut, so I'll go into it and I break it down by like, who has 7 games this week. Okay, who's available on those teams? Which positions do I need or where I can stream, and then what are their matchups. So there's a lot that can go into it, but if you have the time, it definitely pays off. If you don't, then you're in the playoffs for a reason. You've done something right, and kind of just go with what's working.
Yeah, you kind of have a similar strategy to kind of what I do.
Yeah.
In categories, the only thing that I would like to say is I try not to make any moves early on. I want to see how my first like couple days goes,
Yeah.
because if I start streaming pitchers and they mess up my ERA and WHIP,
Who's the nut?
I'm messed up for the week. But if
Percent.
I have a couple aces going on Monday,
Yeah.
and if my opponent has more starting pitchers than I do for the week, because I always look at their lineup as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
I like to compare, and if let's say that they have like 14 pitchers that are going this week, starting pitchers, they're probably going to have more strikeouts, more quality starts, more
Leon.
wins than I am. If I have 9 starting
Sure.
pitchers going or something like that. So like what I've actually done in the past is I try to rely on my hitting to make sure I win at least 3 of those categories. And then in pitching, if I end Monday with like a 180 ERA and like a whip less than 1,
Yeah.
sometimes I even decide to sit more of my pitchers. I'm already
Yeah.
going to lose wins and quality
Yeah.
starts
Why? Why?
and
Yeah.
strikeouts. Why risk it? You know what I mean? And depending on which week I'm in, if it's semifinals or if it's the finals, if my opponent has like 3 amazing closers that I know I'm probably going to lose the saves and holds category, I'll drop
Yeah.
either all or 1 or 2 of my closers or setup guys, so I can free up some roster space for some bats, like you said, some hot bats. Like I just added Pete Crow Armstrong, in
Yeah.
one of my
Good one.
leagues, and just like you said, Jock Peterson, who's batting like over 290 on the season, that he's never really done before, and he's a
Right.
righty masher, and like you said, look at venues, look at like the probable pitchers for the week to see if he's going to be facing a lot of righties. Now that Christian Walker's back in the Diamondbacks lineup, I don't think that Jock Peterson's probably going to play too much against lefties. It's probably going to be a little bit of a platoon play, because like Josh Bell is a righty, or I think he's actually a switch hitter,
Yeah.
so he can hit lefties
Yeah.
fine, and Jock Peterson can take on the righties, and they would kind of share like the DH duties, with
Right.
Josh Bell possibly getting a couple starts at first base as well. So there's a little different strategies involved in categories. In points, I'm just chasing points.
Yeah.
You said you may have made a couple wrong decisions, with picking up quantity over quality.
Yeah.
And the problem right now is towards the end of the season, there's very little quality out there, so you kind of have to like I personally like going on to the ESPN app, because they have a filter for schedule, so I can see all the probable pitchers for the next 5 or 6 days, so I can
Right.
kind of plan out my week. And I'm constantly going back and forth between like looking at the schedule on ESPN and then going back to Yahoo and seeing if they're available, adding them to my watch list. And it's really just like you said, in ESPN we only have 4 moves, in Yahoo we have 7. So with those 7 moves, I try to make like one a day,
Yeah.
so that way I can get at least one streamer per day. Or if there's a day like today where there's not that many games,
Two
then
for
you don't
tomorrow or
really have to
something.
stream for today. You can actually listen to our next segment with our weekend streamers. So we can actually just go ahead and jump into our weekend streamers now. So starting with Friday, I do have a little graphic here to show. Right. So these are all the starters that we have for Friday. Let me take off this Friday streamers banner so you can actually see. So I have these broken down into 4 different categories for Friday starters. There are must starts, points only, desperation moves, and no way Jose. So um I'm going to go ahead and read them off because we have some people that are listening
Yeah.
on Spotify and Apple. So on the must starts, I have obviously a few of them are pretty obvious. Zach Wheeler
Yeah.
at Miami, Tarek Skubal at Oakland, Framber Valdez versus Arizona, Cole Reagans versus Minnesota, Max Fried versus Toronto, Kevin Gosman at Atlanta, Bailey Ober at KC, Nick Pavetta versus the Chicago White Sox, and Cody Bradford versus the Angels. The Bailey Ober one, I was kind of on
Yeah.
the fence about that one, but I know Kansas City is slumping a little bit right now, so
That's his kryptonite, bro. If you look
yeah,
at
I
his starts, and you just point out his bad starts, I think like he's maybe had 4 all year. 3 of the 4 have been against Kansas City. It's not good. So we'll see. Hopefully,
yeah, Bobby Witt seems to be like the big one that just he he's
Masters.
what kind of like jump started the Royals to be like, in the
Oh
top of
yeah.
their division right now. Kansas City is really um the only team that's actually competing with the Guardians right now for that top spot. The Twins were doing good all season, but they kind of like fell apart. They've lost 10 of their last 15, so they're not really in that spot where they kind of like need to be able to, claim the division. It just
Right.
seems like it's the Royals and the Guardians, and Bobby Witt's been a big part of that. So, all right. So Bailey Ober, that one's kind of like on the fence,
Yeah.
and I have him under must start, but I think I'm actually going to change that to points only. I think that he, like you said, man, he's prone to blow up starts, especially versus the Royals.
Yeah.
So, other than that, do you have any other names on under the must start list that you would change to a different
No.
category?
No, honestly, I mean, it's some of it is just obviously based on, like you said, the player themselves, like Tariq Skubal and Wheeler. Doesn't matter. Obviously, they do have good matchups, but it doesn't matter who they would be facing. Others like Pavetta, it's because he's playing the White Sox.
Mm-hmm.
But I think everything there, I have no qualms with. I think it's pretty solid.
All right. And then under points only, we have Bryce Miller at the Cardinals, Mitch Keller versus the Nationals, Ryan Pepio at the Orioles, Eric Fetty versus the Mariners, Brandon Pfaadt at the Astros, Frankie Montas versus the Rockies, Dean Kramer versus the Rays, Tyler Anderson at the Rangers, and Jose Quintana versus the Reds. Now, any one of those that you want to kind of switch over to any other category?
Um, no, I think those I actually feel pretty good with too. I know it's boring to agree with everything, but I think everything there is pretty solid. I mean, there's anyone can argue one way or the other. I don't think any of these would move. I guess you could maybe even say Bryce Miller, the way that he's been pitching, could go up to the must start. But I mean, that I think you might just be splitting here. So for the most part, everything's pretty solid.
Yeah, I put him under points only just because St. Louis,
Has been
they
rough.
have like they've been crazy. Like Goldschmidt, like if you have Goldschmidt
Yeah,
in your fantasy lineup, he's been money lately, man. And
yeah, he's been doing
you
good.
can always kind of count on Arenado to have really good at bats. Maybe he'll go 0 for 4 in a day, but
Yeah,
most of the time he'll stretch
the end of
out
the
each at
series.
bat
Yeah,
to at least 10 pitches or more. So the Cardinals are a pretty tough matchup, especially like if you want your starting pitcher to go 6 innings. It's
right.
hard because they do have pretty good plate discipline. And then under desperation moves, we have DJ Hers at Pittsburgh, Mitch Spence versus the Tigers. Both of those I don't really feel good about. But if there are
Yeah.
none of those names that I mentioned in the points only league or points only category, I think those are the only two that I would kind of just be like, well, F it. There's
Yeah.
no one else available. I'm going to go ahead and go with these guys, and it's mainly because of the opponent, at
Yeah.
Pittsburgh and versus Detroit. So both of those teams are, in the bottom 10 of the league.
Yeah.
Either one of those that you would move?
Honestly, the only I'm thinking about it depending on your league. Now that we're going with it, like in the Real Talk Baseball League, it's a little bit deeper with the pitchers. So for me, I like DJ Hers a little bit more than I think some others do. I would probably put him at least in the points only. But then if I'm thinking about it in like the ESPN league, I'm thinking no, it's probably just desperation. So it is dependent on your league and how deep your league is. But other than hers maybe moving up to points only, those two I think right there at desperation in normal depth wise leagues is fine.
All right. And then under the No Way Jose category, we have Javier Assad versus the Yankees, Matt Boyd at the Dodgers, and Edward Cabrera versus the Phillies. I highly doubt you want to change those to any other category.
No, I mean Boyd has been pitching pretty decent, but I mean at the Dodgers, I just no thanks.
Yeah, unless you're the ace of a staff, and maybe not even just an ace of a staff, maybe more like a super ace. I don't think that I would start any other pitchers against the Yankees, the Dodgers, or the Astros that are just scoring a lot of runs, right now.
Yeah, talking about, streamers, I kind of was looking at, I'm desperate right now. Like we were saying, Rhett Lauder, I was like, he had an okay, but I'm like second start in, career against the Astros after the Astros just got bullied yesterday. I'm like, I'm staying away from that. That's, Astros have been solid. So I did not want to mess with that. Actually, I was going to check in on how that was going today. Of course, he's gone through 3 scoreless. So, it is what it is.
Hey, that's the way the ball
how
bounces, man. That's how the game is. It's you can't predict, sports. I mean, you could do the best you can with the data that we have, but for the most part, like out of this whole list, the ones that are available, I really like Cody Bradford versus the Angels. I really think that he's really going to stick it to him, and he's probably going to go 6 solid innings, get a lot of strikeouts. But we also saw Bobby Miller of the Dodgers go versus the Angels yesterday. And you want to tell the audience what happened if they didn't see?
I don't know his stats off the top of my head, but he got tattooed. I think Bobby Miller's broken for this year, to be honest. It wasn't pretty. If you didn't see it, you didn't miss much. It's not good.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with Bobby Miller right now, dude, but seems.
Yeah, I was looking at it and I was listening to someone talk about it, and he focused a lot more on his junk last year when he was successful, and he did that early on. In his first start, that was good. He abandoned that and was just fastball heavy for a while. His one good start 2 starts ago, he abandoned the going fastball. He went back to the junk, so I was like, okay, maybe it's good. And then yesterday he went back to that, and it didn't go out. Didn't turn out well. So I think there's just something mechanical, most likely, that is just, I don't know. It's not right.
Yeah, it's definitely got to be mechanical, because I'm looking at his last 8 starts, and he has at least 3 walks in 5 of his last 8 starts, and when you're missing your spots like that. So he actually had a lot of strikeouts yesterday. He went 5 innings, got 7 strikeouts, but he was loading the bases. He was getting a lot of traffic on the base paths, and giving up a lot of home runs, dude. I think he gave up like 3 home runs yesterday, and that seemed to be like the biggest thing. And then, it's like we can say all day, like, oh, I'll start any team versus the Angels, or I'll start any team versus the White, or any player versus the White Sox. But the White Sox ended up scoring a lot of runs yesterday too. So these guys are major leaguers, so you got to figure once in a while they're going to have a great game, where just everyone's hitting. And it just seemed like yesterday if you streamed a pitcher versus the White Sox or versus the Angels, you were in a world of trouble, you know?
Right. Yep.
All right. So out of all these, I'm saying Cody Bradford versus the Angels. Do you have another
Yeah.
player that
Um,
you would like to
Man,
go
so
for?
I was looking at him, and again, I'm looking at it like in the Real Talk League. So I went with someone again in more of the desperation. So I went with Hers. I do think he's been a little bit hit or miss, but I think DJ Hers has been decent enough, and he's had some tougher matchups that he just recently played against that he did okay in. So I think at Pittsburgh should be all right. Hopefully, I'm not eating my words, but I like DJ Hers this Friday. He's not going to go out and you know kill it, but I think he'll be very serviceable. I think Bradford has more of an opportunity to go out there and put up a good number for to have you sway back into your into the lead type of thing. But I think Hers is going to be someone that you can throw out there and get a quality game.
Yeah, he's been decent.
Yeah,
He gave up 4 earned runs against Chicago, the Cubs,
they've been
a
hot lately,
few
so
weeks
it's a
ago.
little
They have been hot lately. That's exactly what I was going to say, and those type of starts I don't really like to hold against pitchers, and now going at Pittsburgh, it's a little bit different. It's a weaker lineup. I'm just hoping that his confidence isn't shot because of
right.
that last outing that he had. Hopefully he's saying the same thing that we are, that the Cubs have been hot lately. So
They got to me,
you know,
yeah.
yeah, everyone has a blow up start once in a while, even super aces. Yeah, I like that pick. Cody Bradford, I do want to go a little bit into him. He's currently 44% rostered in Yahoo leagues, and I think that's likely going to rise very soon because he has one of the best matchups of the weekend versus the Angels. But looking at Bradford's last few starts, honestly, I think I would trust him against almost any team right now, except for the teams that we mentioned before, like the Dodgers, Yankees, and Astros. So Bradford has 4 quality starts in his last 4 starts, 2 of which came against the Guardians and the Twins, both really good lineups, tough matchups. The other 2 against the A's and the Pirates, and the A's have actually been on a pretty decent run offensively also. On August 10th, Bradford held the Yankees to 1 run on 5 hits while walking none and striking out 7. So that's 5 great starts in a row. That is the only one of the 5 that wasn't a quality start, but that's only because he only went 5 innings. In 6 starts in August, Bradford has a 3.12 ERA. He's only walked 5 total in those 6 starts. He has close to a strikeout per inning. And with this matchup, like we said against the Angels, man, I really like this matchup, and he's available in a lot of leagues. So if you're listening, add Bradford now, and if Bradford's not available, DJ Hers, we heard it from Kevmo, hopefully he'll put up some points, or in I have him under the desperation category, and you said that you would like to move him to the points only. So in the categories league, I'd say try, not to add unless you already see that you're losing ERA and WHIP. Then go ahead and just pile them up. Get as many starting pitchers as you can, especially ones with high strikeout rates or ones that have the track record of going at least 6 innings. You can get those quality starts and potentially a win as well.
Yeah, I will say this. I think Bradford could be the kind of pitcher that, if he's available, you pick him up, you're going to be like, I don't want to drop him. I want him for next week. Whereas Hers is, I think you pick him up for Friday, and whether it's a good start or not, you're okay with dropping him and moving on to the next, flavor of the week type of thing. That's kind of like that. Like we were saying, you went into Bradford. I don't think we need to go too much into Hers with all the stats. I think it is just kind of like if you are in need of something and you're at a spot where you're okay risking a little bit, then you can stream them. But I do like Bradford. Like I said, after the start on Friday, you might be like, all right, I got to figure out someone else to drop because I want to hold him for next week. If you're there.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Yep. All right, so moving on to Saturday, we have put this graphic up there. All right, so there are 9 starting pitchers that are automatic and obvious starts, in my opinion. 5 names to only start in points leagues, 4 names if you're desperate, and 5 names to say no way Jose to. So starting with our must start category, I have Logan Gilbert at St. Louis, Aaron Nola at Miami, Dylan Cease versus San Francisco, Logan Webb at San Diego, Jose Barrios at Atlanta, Zach Eflin versus Tampa Bay, Sean Manaea versus Cincinnati, Yusei Kikuchi, who's been crazy lately, versus Arizona, and Spencer Schwellenbach versus Toronto. Now, Kevmo, any of those that you would want to move to a different category?
Nah, those are all must starts. I definitely agree. Just again, like we said last time, just based on quality of the pitcher or the matchups, or a little bit of both for a lot of them. So, yeah, I think must starts. Those are all solid.
All right, and then in points only, we have Jared Jones versus Washington, Osvaldo Bido versus Detroit, Tobias Myers versus Colorado, Kyle Gibson versus Seattle, and Mitchell Parker at Pittsburgh. Any one of those you would like to change?
No, I think those are all pretty solid. I would watch Jared Jones, second start back from the injury. He didn't look like himself. It might just be, fatigue. He's even with the time off on with the injury, he hasn't really looked like himself. But second start back, maybe the first, shakes off the rust of the first one. But if he doesn't do good, don't be shocked, is what I'm saying. Other than that, though, I think everyone else is right where they need to be as well.
Yeah, also because Washington is actually their offense has been
Cruz,
pretty
baby.
decent lately. Yeah, seriously. That was such a good trade that they made to get Cruz.
Yep.
All right, moving over to desperation category, we got Garrett Crochet at Boston, Nestor Cortez at the Cubs, Gavin Stone versus Cleveland, and Cooper Criswell versus the White Sox. Now, Garrett Crochet at Boston, I only have under desperation because of 2 things. One is he's on a pitch limit. The Pirates, not the Pirates, the White Sox aren't really letting him go too deep into games. I think they're trying to keep him around 65 to 70 pitches, which means he probably won't get 6 innings. It's probably going to be like 4 and a couple outs, or maybe 5 innings. And it's at Boston, and Boston's playing good baseball lately. So, any of those 4 that I mentioned that you would change to a different category?
No, it's kind of the same thing. I think that like in a deeper league, like ours, I think Crochet is okay in my opinion in a points league, just because like last game he pitched 3 and a third, I think it was, and he had like 7 strikeouts, so he's 7 or 8 or something like that. So he's still going to get you those points. And that's why he only goes 3 and a third, because he's striking out a lot of the guys. So they're obviously seeing at least 3 to 4, pitches each. And he's not getting a lot of ground outs, but it's just the pitch count for him that I'm totally okay with him being in desperation. But other than that, everyone else, Gavin Stone's been looking good again too, but Cleveland is Cleveland. So no, thank you.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
And Nestor Cortez at the Cubs. That one's kind of scary too. I was kind of on the fence about that one, about putting him in like the no way Jose category. Also, I think I might actually want to move Nestor Cortez to the no way Jose, just because of the way that the Cubs have been playing. I really like Nestor Cortez, but I like the Nestor Cortez before the pitch clock. Ever since they introduced the pitch clock, he's just not the same as he was. He's not having fun like he used to. He's the type of guy that likes to go out there like Cueto, and he does like a little Cueto does his little shimmy, his little dance, but Nestor Cortez does his little like leg kick 27 times, and does some weird movements. He's throwing off the batter, and it was interesting to say the least.
Yeah, definitely. I will say this, with Cooper Criswell, I mean, it says something that he's got the White Sox as his matchup, and he's still in desperation. He had a good outing last time, and this is a worse matchup, so I wouldn't be surprised if he outperforms the desperation category, but I also wouldn't be surprised if, he blows up as well. So,
yeah, and his last start was against Detroit, and he only went 4 innings. And when I was looking at his starts, he's never gone more than 4 innings. I think this was actually the longest start of the season for him. So only being able to go 4 innings, if he can put another 17 points up there like he did against
Yeah.
Detroit, then that's great. 17 points is awesome, and
Right.
well, at least that's what the settings are in our league. I don't know about other points leagues, other settings and stuff. But you already mentioned that before about like making sure that your league settings,
Yeah.
which I'm sure towards the end of the season, most of the league managers are pretty familiar with their own settings. So you do you, and yeah,
add it to your.
Cooper
I
Cooper
will real
Criswell,
quick.
I
I
like
want to.
him, but
Yeah. I was
yeah,
I
go
was
ahead.
gonna
What were you
say.
gonna say?
You brought up a guy to me the other day, and I was kind of keeping an eye on him already. I did pick him up. He's now pitching on Saturday. So Brant Herder, where would you throw him? Just for those guys that he's not on the list now because he was a last minute ad for Saturday. Let's see what he's got a 3.25 ERA right now, but his last start against Boston, he went 5 innings, 5 strikeouts. 1 earned run. Where would you throw him? He's playing against the.
Uh-oh. Looks like we lost Kevmo. There you are. What happened?
No, I lost you. I was just saying. Where would you throw your guy that you were kind of helping me out, and I picked him up too, Brant Herder, for this Saturday. He was a last minute ad. So.
Even though he has never gone 6
A's.
innings in his career, I think that I would. It's on the fence with like a must start versus a points league. And I think I'm leaning towards the points league only just because he's probably not going to go 6 innings. But
Right.
it's a good matchup. It's not the best matchup at Oakland,
Sure.
but I really do like him. And I'm going to say points only. Unless,
I was between points only and desperation just because he's not totally proven yet. He's only got like 27 and 2/3 innings under his belt in the majors this year. So I was kind of in between that, but I'm leaning towards points only. I think his stuff plays. So
yeah, and at Oakland, that's
yeah.
it's probably like a top like 6 matchup, I would say.
Right. So if you can't, for those watching or listening, he's not on the list, but he was a last minute ad. So last name Herder, just like it sounds, Hurt-er. So look him up.
All right, and then under No Way Jose, we have Simeon Woods Richardson at the Royals, Alex Cobb at the Dodgers, Zach Littell at the Orioles, Jordan Wicks versus the Yankees, and Eduardo Rodriguez at the Astros. All big powerhouse offensive teams that I would never touch with a 20-foot pole.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think Littell has been pushed to Sunday, which means I guess Friday was pushed as well. But regardless, it doesn't matter. What doesn't matter the day, I still kind of feel the same. So
Yeah, that's the kind of thing with like the 2-star pitchers
yeah,
and weekend streamers is like we get our list going and then, someone gets bumped because they have a stomach bug, and then they have like a spot starter or like a bullpen day and then he ends up
right.
pitching the next day or something. So
Yeah.
make sure you are looking and paying attention to these names to verify that they're actually going to start.
Yeah.
On
Before you pick.
Saturday, or
Yeah.
most of the time they're only pushed a day unless it's like
Yeah.
an actual injury or if it's an illness that lasts a little bit longer. But Sunday's the big day. If
Yes.
if a start gets pushed back, great, you'll have him for the championship week, but you're gonna need to
Gotta get
win
there
this
first.
week first. So hopefully you don't waste one of your picks, that you can actually make for the week. And all right, so that was Saturday. So who do you like the best out of this group? Let me put this back.
Availability wise, I mean, if Tobias Myers is available, I didn't actually look at his roster percentage. If he's available, I think I like him the most. Again, just based off of matchups and stuff. I'm gonna look it up real quick because I'm right there.
So he's
But other than
52%.
yeah, so he's under that 60%. So it's probably him. But if not him, who's someone who's really low is Mitchell Parker. Kind of similar. I'm not a Nationals fan, guys. Okay, I got 2 back-to-back, but not a Nationals fan. but he's looked pretty good. He had one bad start. It's I'm pulling I'm pulling one of those guys from the CBS where I'm taking away one start of the last five, and then his stuff looks good. He's got a 6.5 ERA, but if you take away that last start, it's more of like a 2.31. Not his last one, but his one against Philly, which
See, that's the thing. Also, it's Philly's the type of team that can also put up 10 runs in a game. Yeah.
So if you take that away, considering he's playing against Pittsburgh, he's pitching more to like a 2.5 ERA with 25 strikeouts over his last, over those four. So I feel pretty good about playing Mitchell Parker against Pittsburgh. A little bit better than I think I feel about with even hers the day before, same matchup. But with that being said, again, these are the types of pitchers that are a little bit, you still hold your breath when you're in the playoffs. With Tobias Myers against Colorado, I don't think you need to hold your breath. I think you're going to feel fine with that. So those are probably the two. I gave you two, but Mitchell Parker's the one that's definitely more available, and you can probably get him and feel a little bit better about that.
All right. Now I'm gonna kind of give two also. I know you said that you don't really like Jared Jones right now because he just came back from injury and his last start wasn't the greatest, but I think that was just kind of like, shaking off a little rust. He was probably a little bit nervous coming back from injury, considering also that it's his rookie season. So I think getting back out there for his second start since he got back, I think he's going to do a little bit better. But there is one name that I like a little bit more than Jared Jones. And honestly, Jared Jones is probably too owned anyway. I'm going to look at his roster percentage real quick. So he's actually at 73% rostered. So I highly doubt that he's going to be available in anything, 12 teams or deeper. Maybe in 10-team leagues he's available. But there is one name that I like just a little bit more than Jared Jones, and that's Osvaldo Bido versus Detroit. He is currently 47% rostered. One of the best pitching matchups in all of baseball versus Detroit. The Tigers have the 26th worst batting average, the 28th worst on base percentage, 22nd in home run totals. Matt Vierling, who has the highest batting average on the team, his batting average is 261. That's the highest of the team, and Riley Green, who leads the team in home runs, only has 20. The Tigers only have 5 players with double-digit homers and 2 with at least 15. So most of these guys have less than 15 home runs. Basically, the whole team has less than 15 home runs except for 2 guys. This matchup alone is enough to trust Bido in the start. But Bido currently has a 3.52 ERA. His expected ERA is 2.80. This is why we do these deep dives into these players, because sometimes it's just some bad luck, and it looks like Bido is a benefactor of some really bad luck, because even though 352 is great, or I mean it's serviceable, that expected ERA of 280, that just makes me like him a lot more.
Yeah, 100%. This was the guy that when you sent me your list, I was like, oh, I got to change one of my guys so that we don't have the same player. This was the guy I initially was thinking about talking about. So.
Yeah, and I think out of all the points league only guys or anyone on here that's less than 60% rostered, I think Osvaldo actually has the highest chance to go 6 innings.
Yeah.
Maybe Kyle Gibson versus Seattle. I think that's a really good matchup as well. Seattle actually has the worst batting average in the league. But Kyle Gibson, he's that type of guy that, like, maybe I should have put him in desperation, because I would really only add him if I was desperate. It's versus Seattle, I feel like he's at least going to get you 10 points, hopefully more than that. But so Osvaldo Bido doesn't get a lot of strikeouts, but what he does do is limit the hard contact. The average exit velocity against Bido is only 85.6 miles per hour. That's crazy to me. That's 96th percentile. He allows a lot of fly balls, 29.6% fly ball rate, but he has a 15.1% pop-up rate. That means that half of all his fly balls he gives up are pop flies. Right. That's awesome. That's an automatic out, basically, unless you're playing against, like, a crazy infield that doesn't know what they're doing, like the White Sox or something.
Exactly.
He had a rough time out this past Monday against the Mariners, but the home run he gave up to Cal Raleigh was the first since July 28th, and only his third home run given up all season.
No,
Each of his pitches
gonna
has an
happen.
expected batting average of under 200. So going into this matchup against the Tigers, that are one of the lowest batting average teams in baseball, I think it's a great opportunity for fantasy owners to rack up some points.
Yep, I agree, 100%.
All right, man. That was Saturday. We can go ahead and move on to Sunday now. So Sunday under must starts, we have Corbin Burns versus Tampa Bay, Chris Sale versus Toronto, Paul Skeens versus Washington, Luis Castillo at St. Louis. That one I was kind of shaky about also because Luis Castillo has been kind of just like up and down. I actually have Luis Castillo in our keeper league, and I am debating if I actually want to keep him for next season or not. I don't really see him as the ace that he once was. You know, when he
Yeah,
first went to Seattle, he was great. You know, the changeup was working, the fastball was working, and I don't know, maybe it's just age is kind of catching up to him.
yeah.
Freddie Peralta versus Colorado. Garrett Cole at the Cubs, which he's probably not going to make that start anymore because it looks like he might be going on the IL soon.
Yeah.
Jack Flaherty versus Cleveland, and Joe Musgrove versus San Francisco. All right, so any of those, would you move from must start to a different category?
No, I think. I mean, no. I'm just looking over them again. I think I like them all. I think. No, I'm gonna keep it. Yeah, I like them. Let's go with that.
All right, just fantasy owners, make sure you keep an eye on Garrett Cole. If you are already in your playoffs and he goes on the 10-day IL, you might want to consider dropping him in redraft leagues. You know, there's no point in holding on to him if he's not even going to make a start for the rest of the season, or at least like your fantasy playoffs. And moving over to the points league only, we have Ronel Blanco versus Arizona, Michael Waka versus Minnesota, Brian Bello versus the White Sox, Luis Severino versus Cincinnati, Ryan Nelson at Houston, Jeffrey Springs at Baltimore, Andrew Heaney versus the Angels, Patrick Corbin at Pittsburgh, and David Festa at the Royals.
So I like a lot of these. I will say, so Springs and Festa have been pushed till Monday.
Yes,
So just keep an eye on that,
I actually
guys.
was going to follow up with that also. I'm glad you said that because
Yeah.
coming up on our two-star pitchers segment, David Festa is on that list now.
Yeah, and honestly, Festa was going to be the guy I was going to talk about for streamers on Sunday, and then he got pushed. So I picked someone different. But other than that, the list is the same. I will say this, guys. With basically because of the way that the lineups or the matchups are panning out, all of the analysis is the same. So, like Will was saying, Friday to Saturday, if they get pushed, Saturday to Sunday, they get pushed. It's all the same analysis. It's just keep an eye on these Sunday people getting pushed to Monday, like Will had said earlier. Other than that, though, like they're playing the same matchups, so everything's going to be the same about whether no matter which day they're playing, whether it's a must start or points leagues, regardless of that. With that being said, the rest of the points leagues players, I agree. The only one that gives me a little hesitation is Patrick Corbin, just because we all know he's liable to. Doesn't matter the matchup. He can come out against the Phillies and pitch 6 and throw 10 strikeouts, or he'll come against pitch against the White Sox and give up 7 in the first 2 innings. So doesn't matter. He's just how he's feeling for that day. He's the only one that I'd be a little hesitant on, but he's been decent lately. So points only is fine, but don't be mad when when he has a blow up start against Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I like Patrick Corbin. I actually just picked him up for his previous start this week, and he was actually very impressive. So
Very
I'm glad I picked him up. But like you just said, he's very hit and miss, man. And I actually dropped him the very next day after he made his start because I don't really trust him for anything other than points leagues. And the league that I actually added him in was a categories league. So
He did his job.
definitely don't want Patrick Corbin for my my weekend when I'm in the semifinals right now.
Right.
All right, and moving over to desperation, we have Miles Michaelis versus Seattle, Kyle Freeland at Milwaukee,
Yeah.
and those are the only two in desperation. So either one of those, would you move to a different category?
Um, no, I think that's fine. Kyle Freeland, I could see going into the No Way Jose. He's been pitching fine too, but Milwaukee, I mean, even though I feel like, other than a couple of guys, you know, I don't know. They for some reason they come out and they play well all the time. So I don't know. Kyle Freeland, yeah, we'll keep him in desperation in my for me as well. Yeah.
All right, and then moving on to No Way Jose, we have Jameson Taillon versus the Yankees, Gavin Williams at the Dodgers, Max Meyer versus Philadelphia, and Yariel Rodriguez at Atlanta. Any one of those that you would like to switch over to a different category?
No, I think that those are pretty good too. Rodriguez, I could see being okay. Atlanta should be playing worse than what they're playing because of all their injuries, but they're still doing it. They're still hanging in there, and yeah, Yadiel Rodriguez can give you a lot of strikeouts, but he also can give up a ton of runs. So I think No Way Jose is there unless you're really deep league. Then I would be okay with him in desperation.
Yeah, and even though Atlanta is without four of their top bats, they're still putting up runs, dude. Like they're giving up a lot of runs, and I think the Phillies have such a good lead on the division. I don't think that they have a
It's gonna,
chance to
yeah.
take the division, but they're still scoring some runs, dude. They still have Matt Olson, they still have Marcelo Suna,
Yep.
really good hitters, and I think Ozzy Albies might actually be coming back soon, also.
Yeah, and Harris just came back, so
Yeah, I love Michael Harris.
yeah.
All right, so out of all these, you said David Festa, but he's been pushed
Yeah.
back. So, which name do you like the best that is 60% rostered or less?
I'm gonna go with Andrew Heaney. He's been pretty decent recently. 2.23 ERA in the last over the last four starts. He pitched against the Yankees and the Twins. I know that they've been a little bit slower, but they've been not so bad. Overall throughout the season, 26 Ks over those last four starts. So he's been doing pretty solid. And the Angels, like we said, they can have a good start like they did against Bobby Miller, but I think that might have been more Bobby Miller than necessarily the Angels. So I think Andrew Heaney against the Angels, a little revenge, might be pretty solid.
Yeah, I like Andrew Heaney, and
Yeah.
he's been solid,
Yeah.
for the past few seasons. And when you see a good matchup like this, I'm all over it.
Yep.
All right, and the player that I picked from this list is Brian Bello. So Bello had his best start of the season last Wednesday when he faced the Blue Jays. He went 8 innings, allowing 2 hits, no earned runs, 1 walk, and 9 strikeouts. Followed that up with a performance that was pretty bad, but it wasn't terrible against the surging Mets that are currently fighting for a wild card spot. He went 5 innings, allowing 7 hits, 4 earned runs, 1 walk, and 4 strikeouts. And there's a bunch of other pitchers that I would actually rather have than Brian Bello, but you can't deny this matchup, dude, against possibly the worst team in MLB history, the
History.
2024 Chicago White Sox. They
That's
are
what it is.
29th in batting average and hits, 30th in OBP, OPS, runs, and home runs. Now, I found an interesting stat yesterday, which pretty much solidified my pick for my favorite Sunday streamer. So the most losses in a single season belongs to the 1962 Mets with 120 losses. The 2024 White Sox are currently at 109 losses, and there's still 21 games to go. White Sox they had that blow up game yesterday where they scored a bunch of runs and they finally won a game. But other than that, they haven't won a game since August 21st, and they lost 12 games in a row, or was it 13 games in a row? That's pretty bad, dude. If that doesn't prove that Bello should be one of the top streaming options for Sunday, I don't know what else could.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. He's
All
got
right,
enough
and
good stuff to be good, regardless.
yeah, Yeah, and he was one of those guys that in the beginning of the season, towards the mid season, a lot of people were trying to pick him up, and he was basically rostered everywhere. It kind of fell off a little bit, and he's been heating up,
Yeah,
lately. So I like the start, White Sox context. That's
it's all
the
good. Yeah.
biggest thing. And that concludes our weekend streamer segment. And now we do a dive into next week to get a little bit of head start against the competition. And that would be our 2-start pitchers. Now I have a graphic for this also. All right. So 2-star pitchers for next week. Under must start, I have Tanner Bybee at the White Sox and versus the Rays. Ben Lively at the White Sox and versus the Rays. David Festa versus the Angels and versus Cincinnati, and Justin Verlander versus Oakland and the Angels. Now, any one of those, do you want to change to a different category?
No, definitely. I like them all. I mean, I think Festa, honestly, Verlander is just because of the matchups. He's been not very good lately, but I think against Oakland and the Angels, I think he still is there in the must start. But I mean, Festa, I think he's the real deal. I heard them call him the Slim Reaper, and I love that. And
That's funny. I haven't heard that yet.
he's like super. Yeah, I mean, if you see him, you understand the name. I like it. It's fun. But I think the rest of those can stay there. I like it.
David Festa kind of has this like a Chris Sale thing going on.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah. Yep.
All right. And then under points only, we have Chris Bassett versus the Mets and the Cardinals, Mackenzie Vore versus the Braves and the Marlins, Christopher Sanchez versus the Rays and the Mets, David Peterson at the Blue Jays and at the Phillies, Cade Povich at the Red Sox and at the Tigers, Tanner Houck versus the Orioles and at the Yankees, and Nathan Eovaldi at the Diamondbacks and at the Mariners. Any one of those that you would like to change to a different category?
I like them. I like them all. Peterson's been pitching really well. Povich makes me the most nervous. I know I just streamed him and he came out and was awesome, but it was against the White Sox. He does have one of the matchups against Detroit, which I like, but Boston, at Boston, and he's a lefty. They're gonna go righty heavy, and with the Green Monster there, I'm a little nervous about that. So, yeah, I think because it's in the points only category, I think Povich is okay there, but he's the one that makes me the most nervous. I guess Houck too. He's been a little iffy. He's got some tough matchups, but he still has enough stuff to pull together. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think with Tanner Houck, he also has that good offense behind him also. So some pretty decent run support. Boston's winning a lot of games right now. And, it's against division rivals. So guys tend to play a little bit harder, step it up a little bit when they're playing against their division rivals, especially against the Yankees in that second start. All right, then under desperation moves, we have Carlos Rodon versus the Royals and versus the Red Sox. JP Sears at the Astros and at the White Sox, George Kirby at the Padres and at the Rangers, and Aaron Savali at the Giants and at the Diamondbacks. Any one of those you want to move to a different category?
Man, George Kirby, how did we get to where we're at, man? I am okay with moving Kirby to points only just because I think he has enough stuff, and San Diego's a tough lineup. He's not going to strike out a lot there anyway, but I think Texas isn't what they used to be or what they were last year, so it should be okay. And I think I trust Kirby enough to be in points only, but he's I'm holding my breath a little bit on that first start.
Yeah, it's scary because San Diego and Arizona are both trying to fight for a wild card spot. I don't think that they're going to take it away from the Dodgers because the Dodgers have been playing such great baseball lately, except for yesterday. But I think they have they have a pretty good hold on the division. But San Diego is really trying to get back into the playoffs. They played good last year and they made it to the playoffs, and they didn't do anything with it. Arizona, they actually ran with it and made it all the way to the World Series and ended up losing. But you can't deny the talent from either one of those teams. Fernando Tatis just came back from injury, so that's just another bullet in the chamber that they have. And George Kirby, I feel like he just focuses too much on control.
Yeah.
He's so adamant about he just doesn't want to walk anybody that he ends up throwing too many of his pitches in the zone, and sometimes he just gets teed off on, and
Yep.
at San Diego, that's better than being at his home ballpark a little bit. San Diego is known for not really giving up a lot of home runs in that ballpark, so that is a little bit in his favor. But I don't know. I'm kind of off of the George Kirby hype train. Ever since midway through this season.
Yeah.
And then No Way Jose, we have a lot of names. So real quick, we have Rhett Lauder that you mentioned at Atlanta and at Minnesota. Hayden Birdsong versus Milwaukee versus San Diego. Brady Singer at the New York Yankees and at Pittsburgh. Charlie Morton versus Cincinnati versus the Dodgers. Cutter Crawford versus the Orioles and at the Yankees. Taj Bradley at the Phillies at the Guardians. Walker Buehler at versus the Cubs and at Atlanta. That should not be in a No Way Jose category, but unfortunately it is, because this guy just he has not been the same since he came back from Tommy John surgery. He's trying to find it, but even against weaker lineups, he can't get it done, dude.
Can get it, yeah.
Cater Montero versus Colorado and versus Baltimore. Jeffrey Springs at the Phillies, at the Guardians. Griffin Canning at the Twins, at the Astros. Nick Martinez at the Braves, at the Twins. Valente Beloso at the Pirates and at the Nationals. And Marcus Stroman versus the Royals and versus the Red Sox. Marcus Stroman, man, I don't understand why everyone was so high on him the last couple seasons and why he actually got that contract from the Yankees. I really didn't understand it, because I've never really seen him as like someone that would demand that type of contract.
Yeah.
He was great in the World Baseball Classic a few years ago, but other than that, like, he's never been like a standout with anything. I think he had like 2 really good seasons in his whole career, and that's about it.
Yeah. I'm with you. I feel like Stroman has always gotten a little more hype than what I think he's actually worth. I think he's just a step up of just a guy, because he did have those 2 good years, but I think for the most part he's just in the mix of all the whatever type of guys.
Yeah, he doesn't really throw too hard, and if you're not striking guys out in this day and age, it's like you're kind of like a little bit of an afterthought, unless you are just like a super ground ball heavy type of pitcher that gets like, a 50% ground ball rate or something. But then in that instance, you also have to have a really good infield behind you, or else those ground balls that you're giving up don't mean anything. And then you load the bases because, your infield isn't doing it for you.
Yeah, exactly. I will say I like Springs, but man, his matchups are terrible. So
I know.
It's like, man, Jeffrey Springs has looked really good. I mean, honestly, in the keeper league, I was debating on dropping him, but I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to win anyway, and he's such a good keeper cost that I'm not giving him to anyone else. So I'll just eat it. I don't even know if I'm gonna keep him, but I'm not letting anyone else keep him. That's for sure.
Yeah. See, and that's how it is for me with Shane McClanahan, who had Tommy John. I got him for $1, dude, in our salary auction draft. So
insane.
$1 for he's basically a super ace when he's healthy.
Dude, I was stoked about $2 for Springs, but then again, you see McClanahan, and I was like, well, that fucking sucks. Or
it didn't help me at all this season. I feel like I stacked up way too much on injured players that I got for super cheap, and I ended up finishing 7th in our league, which kind of sucks. But it's the keeper thing is somewhat new for us, so learning as I go, just like I did in the beginning when I started playing fantasy baseball in 2014.
Right. I will say this update on the Rhett Lauder game against the Astros. Rhett Lauder has gone 6 1/3 so far, and he's currently on the mound still. He's given up 3 hits, no earned runs, only 3 strikeouts, but this is kind of encouraging. So With Rhett Lauder, Atlanta is tough. Minnesota, or can be tough, and Minnesota also can be tough. But he's been doing okay. I'm okay with throwing him in desperation because it's the championship, and you might be desperate. Or if it's the semis, depending on how what your league is, you still might be desperate. I'm okay with Rhett Lauder. He's got the prospect pedigree, so let's you can roll the dice, and I would back you up on that.
Yeah, I would be okay with moving him over to the desperation category. It's I think it might actually be even closer after this start today between points only and desperation rather than between desperation and No Way Jose.
Yeah.
All right. So out of all these names, I know you already mentioned David Festa, but is there any other name that kind of like, jumps out at you that might be available?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm kind of okay with Rhett Lauder. Yeah, I said Festa might be available. Yeah, I was kind of thinking. I was going back and forth. Yeah, other than Festa, who I think is available. You know what? David Peterson. If he's still available, that guy has been pitching well. You got the whole New York Mets making a push. The team is playing well, which I do believe that does help the pitcher when everything's going well for even the hitters on the other side. As a pitcher, you got those vibes going. He does have the tough matchup against Philly, but I don't know. I think that
Is it though? Is it though?
that's true.
Because
That's true.
is Harper going to be in the lineup? And the
If he
rest of the
is, if he's
team
been
has just
playing,
kind of been like hit and miss. Also, Cassian also have like a great game going 5 for 5, and then the next 3 games he goes 0 for 4. And then Schwarber, he kind of traded some of his home runs for a little bit of batting average. Was that the right thing to do?
He's been hot right
Because
now, but who
he
knows
has
when
been
that.
hot. I think he had a 3-homer game a few days ago. But he has more opportunities to hit home runs than anyone else in that lineup because he's the leadoff hitter. So why doesn't he have 50 home runs yet? Why aren't we seeing the Kyle Schwarber that we saw from last season? Well, like I said, he traded in some home runs for batting average, but is his 250 batting average really going to help out the team more than his 50 home runs would? A 250 batting average with 35 home runs versus a 220 batting average with 50 home runs. I'd go for the 220 with the 50.
50, yeah, at that point for sure.
Especially in the
John might
leadoff
not
spot,
like.
man.
Oh yeah, definitely. John might not like this, but the Phillies look a lot like how the underwhelming Dodgers had looked in the years past, where they played really well really early on, and then come that towards the end, the last month, they start kind of teetering off a little bit. They blew their wad a little too early. So
I have a little bit of a theory about that.
yeah,
And
let's hear it.
the theory that I have is for the longest time, the Giants, the Rockies, the Diamondbacks, and the who did I say? I guess the Giants, Rockies, Diamondbacks, and Padres have been very bad, and the Dodgers were just the powerhouse of the National League West, and they would just, blow their way through the competition, winning 106 games in a season. And then you get to the playoffs, and then you're actually playing some good teams, and they fall apart because they're not used to that type of competition, and I feel like the Phillies might be a little bit of the same because the Braves are not what they were last year. The Mets are, the Mets are the Mets, and the Marlins suck, and basically every team in that division is pretty bad except for the Phillies, and they're not really having that high level of competition to be facing against. So then when they're put into these higher leverage situations, like when you're facing really good teams or at least hot teams, they kind of struggle a little bit, and it seems like that's what's kind of been happening lately in Philly, which is the same thing that's been happening in LA the past few seasons.
Right. Yeah. Now the Dodgers are having to play the Padres and the Diamondbacks more often, that are playing way better, and they're kind of keeping their competition level a little bit more throughout the year than they had to. Yeah, I back that. I mean, and the Mets and the Braves are playing hot right now, and there it is when the Phillies start playing a little cold. Coincidence? I think not.
Right, exactly.
We'll
All right.
see.
So
I kind of do want to see a Phillies Dodgers matchup just because John and I have been going back and forth. All love, no, it's just all friendly competition. And I do like. I'm a big Bryce Harper guy, and so I think that would be a fun matchup. He's like, "Oh, that's a perfect matchup for us. I'm not scared of the Dodgers at all." I'm like, "All right, well, we'll see." So.
It's all talk, man. It's all
Oh
talk.
yeah.
Any person that says that they're not scared of the Dodgers or the Yankees or the Astros, I think either they just don't know baseball or they're just blowing smoke up your butt.
Exactly. I agree.
All right, so I do want to mention about Justin Verlander. He's only on my must start solely based on matchups, which you kind of mentioned before, versus Oakland and at the Angels. You know, I would start almost any starting pitcher against 6 teams. The White Sox, obviously, the Tigers, the Rays, the Mariners, the A's, and the Angels. 3 teams from the American League West. The American League Central has been so bad for so long, but the A's are moving to another state, in 2026, so they're not spending money right now. The Mariners focus too much on pitching. They forgot that they need to score runs also. All they really have is Julio Rodriguez and Cal Raleigh. Like who else is in the lineup that's actually like kind of scary, and Cal Raleigh doesn't even play every day because he's a catcher. So 4 or 5 times a week, not being in the lineup every day. And Julio Rodriguez has kind of been down this season anyway. I think it's because he's lacking that like veteran presence in the clubhouse.
Yeah.
He doesn't have anyone to kind of like, guide him. I feel like there's so many other players that could have been on the Mariners, and they have Justin Turner now, which is great, but Julio Rodriguez, I feel like because of that language barrier, he would have benefited from a Hispanic player. That would have been someone that he could have connected with rather than Red Turn 2. That would have been a little bit more that he could relate to. And the Angels, they've had 2 different players that were considered the best baseball player in their era, and they did nothing with it. They did nothing with it. They did nothing with Trout. They did nothing with Ohtani. They gave a bunch of money to Rendon because he had one really good season. That they didn't take the early opportunity to extend Ohtani. They didn't build around Trout early enough. Last season, they knew they had no chance to go to the World Series or even make the playoffs at all. But then they start adding pieces like Lucas Giolito instead of rebuilding and trying to trade Ohtani. What a dumb move to just sit on Ohtani and just hope for the best, especially with being in the same division as the Astros. It made absolutely no sense. And the Rangers that were just like on a crazy run last year. The Angels owner needs to sell the team to someone who actually wants to win, and the Angels front office needs to be fired. Spend some money. I think the owner needs to spend some money on a better GM, and I don't know. That's kind of like all I wanted to say about my buddy Ernie's Angels. That was my my crosstown rival Psychotic rant for the day.
Yeah, sorry Ernie, but your organization sucks right
now, and he knows it too. He says it all the time.
You're on an Oakland trajectory. Not quite because you guys actually have money with everything going on in Anaheim, but I mean it's just bad. It's just not.
All right, so good. That was Justin Verlander, and also I have circled right here David Festa versus the Angels. Versus the Angels again, just like Verlander, and versus Cincinnati, who is another weak lineup. Cincinnati's kind of hit and miss. They have LA De La Cruz. They have a couple, other bright spots, but they have a lot too many rookies to really trust to be consistent, throughout the season. It's okay for like 2 or 3 guys to be, a little bit inconsistent throughout the season because the rest of the team is going to carry them a little bit. But when you have that many rookies on the team, it's hard for them to catch fire and kind of keep it.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
David Festa matchups are great. Both home matchups against weak lineups. I think Festa's biggest flaw out of his 9 starts, he's only gone 6 innings once this season. It seems to be, it seems to be only because he was so efficient after throwing 88 pitches in that 6 inning start. I think he could definitely do that again against the two teams that have terrible team batting average and are not known for their plate discipline. So July 30th, when Festa rejoined the rotation, the Twins rotation, he started 7 games, has given up 3 runs only once against the Cardinals, and 6 of those 7 starts, he's given up 2 earned runs or less. You know, Festa's name isn't really known throughout the baseball community because he's a rookie and he doesn't have much pedigree, but he's looked really impressive since joining the Twins rotation. I see a lot of upside for the future. Has a 29% K rate, a 6.5% walk rate, limits the hard contact. Opponents have an average exit velocity of 89.1 miles per hour. He relies on 3 pitches: the fastball, the changeup, and the slider. He's relied heavily on his fastball, throwing it 40% of the time. But this is where I think he thrives. His slider and his changeup are both about 30%. Most of the time, starting pitchers have one dominant pitch and one like semi-dominant secondary pitch, but this guy throws his slider and changeup about the same, and they're both very good pitches. He has a decent pitch mix. I think if the Twins can get him to add one more pitch to his arsenal, maybe a splitter that seems to be like the big pitch in baseball now, or some type of curve, a slurve, something like that, some type of breaking pitch, I think that would take Festa's game just up another level. I don't think we'll ever see Festa becoming an ace or anything, but he could be a solid number 2 in the Twins rotation for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think that he's got good stuff. I think, like you said, adding the extra pitch could be really big for him, making that leap for next year. So I'm sure we'll talk about him in the offseason, or you'll talk about him in the offseason.
Definitely.
As a sleeper for next year. He's only, I just pulled it up, 16% rostered in Yahoo. So go get the Slim Reaper, guys, and let him help you move on or win the championship next year. Or this week.
He's definitely going to be on my radar next year going into the 2025 baseball draft. He's only at 107 innings so far, which is already more than his previous career high. So I would imagine next season he'll probably be able to bump that up to like 150, maybe a little bit more if the Twins are willing to let him go a little bit. Other than Festa, the names in the points leagues only category, I think that those are pretty decent. Most of these are not going to be available because most of them are at least 70% rostered or higher. I think all of them are actually pretty universally owned. I don't see anyone that maybe Mackenzie Gore, because he's been. Who's that? You said David 50. Peterson. I think he would be definitely my second option for the 2 starts next week. So David Festa and David Peterson. If you guys have 2 roster spots available, go out and get them both, man. Those 4 starts will definitely boost your lineup, and hopefully it will help you move on to either the next round in your fantasy playoffs, or if next week is your championship round, that'll just kind of like not necessarily solidify your championship, but it'll definitely make it a lot easier to win.
Yeah, good staples for that.
Definitely. All right, guys, we have reached the end of the show. We're at an hour and 13 minutes. We gave you a lot of content. There were some fantasy baseball playoff strategies, some weekend streamers, and some 2-star pitchers. Make sure you tune in next week. I think it will be probably our second to last episode of Fantasy Baseball, the Fantasy Baseball podcast for this season. We will continue to be podcasting throughout the regular MLB season. Won't really be talking fantasy too much. Maybe we'll start talking about draft prep for next year a little bit. We're probably going to be focusing more on real baseball playoffs. So all right, for Kevmo, thank you again for being on the show today. I appreciate you. And I am Will Power. And this was Real Talk Fantasy Baseball. See you guys next week. Peace.
See you guys. Good